Hello, 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 y'all. We have an awesome guest today. And I'm not even going to bother introducing her myself because I don't like doing that. So, Erica Hart, welcome to
What
the Empowered
up?
Artist Collective podcast.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for
Oh,
having me. I'm happy to be here.
it's my pleasure. For those of us in the ether who don't know you, feel free to
Mm.
introduce yourself however you see fit today.
That's a good point. How do I see fit myself today? So
Listen,
today, my name is Erica Hart. Maybe tomorrow will be something different.
could
But
be.
today it's Erica Hart. I'm a casting director in New York City. I work on film, TV, theater, commercials, dance, live events. I also produce and I also write. Some things that I have cast: That Damn Michael Che season 1. I'm working on season 2 right now. Work on Bust Down, which will be on Peacock March 10th. Look out for that.
Mhm.
Worked on Passover. That was my Broadway debut. That
Yes.
premiered, yes, last year, as well as Chicken and Biscuits on Broadway. So from DC, went to NYU, never left, and here I am today talking to you.
Yes. I'm just curious. I know this is maybe biased, but like today as well, what has been one of your favorite projects that you've worked on? I mean, it could
Mm,
be from any angle of all of the things that you do.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard because I see my projects as my babies because I
Yeah.
work so hard on them and I spend so much time on them. And each of them is my favorite for different reasons. So, like, if you
Mhm.
take Chicken and Biscuits, even though Passover was my Broadway debut and I loved working on that, Chicken and Biscuits was technically the first Broadway show I was hired to do. Right. So, like, that's great. And then Michael Che was the first TV show that I was hired to do. So it's like a lot of firsts. Like,
Yeah.
The Surrogate was the first time I got an Artios nomination and I won. And working with my teammates from NYU. And then there's some commercials that is like my first commercial or it's my favorite brand. So Passover was the first time when I worked with Daniel Sweet. So it's like everything is kind of my favorite because everything has a little piece of the first, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah, I like all of them. I like working with great people.
Mhm.
And I've been lucky that for the most part, the projects that I've worked on have been with great people.
Do you find that you find them or they find you or other people? Is it more within your own network of how you find said people at this point?
I usually don't find them. They usually find me.
Right.
It's similar to acting. A lot of people don't understand, especially when you're freelance. Like when I was at ABC for 7 years, I was there. So it was very corporate. The work came to me in that regard. When you're freelance, people look out for you.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's very much like acting, where once a job is finished, you're looking for the other job and
Mhm.
you're waiting for someone to hire you. So I've been very lucky in the sense that people have been hiring me and have been recommending me to other things. Like the project I'm working on now, I'm working on a project called JODIE, which is the Daria spinoff, and Tracee Ellis Ross is producing it. And that came from a
So
producer
cool.
from That Damn Michael Che. And that's my favorite right now because it's my first animated project that I've ever worked
Yes.
on. So I'm very just blessed and grateful that the people that I work with and for um, pass my name around. And
Yeah.
then of course, like everything, you know, is in a network, and that's what I try to tell actors as well as filmmakers. Is I know it's very cheesy when you're in class and you're like, yeah, I know these are the people I'm going to be working with for the rest of my life, but it is very true. The
Yeah.
Surrogate, which was the film I worked on, Jeremy Hirsch wrote and directed it, and I literally met him first day in college. First day. I'm not even being facetious. And everything that has come from that, every independent thing that has come from that, most of the time has come from someone I went to school with.
Right. I was teaching a master class this past week, and that was literally the same. I said the exact same thing, which
Mm-hmm.
is like you look around next to you and you could be like, ah, this person, eh. It's like you literally, first, not to act disingenuous
Yeah.
around people, but you literally have no idea the artist that you're sitting next to and the breadth of work and ideas and brilliance
Yes.
that is perhaps inside of them that just is waiting
Yes.
to be unleashed. And it's just, I feel like it's such a disservice to oneself to write that off and the
Yes.
possibility of collaboration. And yeah, how it starts so young. It
It
can.
starts. It can, and how people shapeshift. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
might be in an acting class, and the next time you work with someone, they're the costume designer,
Mm-hmm.
or they're the lighting designer, or they're the key PA. Like, it's interesting how this business is ever so changing, and because of that, people are changing within it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're always going to be working with someone on that set. It's either you know them personally, or you are like 1 degree away from somebody.
Yeah. How do you, for people who feel as though like they might not, the word networking, which I also is like icky to me because it's just human beings being people, but like,
Yes.
for people who feel like I don't have many people in my life besides the like actually you do just sit down and look at the people that you know
Yeah.
route, what do you recommend is like the way in which someone can begin to facilitate the relationship, to begin building a relationship if somebody is say a friend of a friend, or somebody
Mhm.
is an admirer of somebody from afar? What
Yeah.
have you found is like a healthy, helpful way?
I think what you said from the top, just being genuine. You know,
Mhm.
I think if you are seeking something just to seek something, I think there might be something there that might not go in your favor, right?
Right.
Because I think this whole business is about helping each other. It's a collaboration, regardless of where
Say it
you are.
again. Yes, say
So,
it again.
so regardless if you're acting, regardless if you're directing, if you're casting, if you're booming, whatever it is, it's collaboration. And so I think instead of going it as the I and going it as the we,
Mhm.
I think is great. And I think you for that to happen, you do also have to shoot your shot.
Right.
You do also have to reach out. You do have to. I get at least 10, you know, actors in my DMs a day, at
Wow.
least, just like people I don't know. And that's probably lowballing it, to be honest.
Are they
Um,
saying like, "Hi, nice to meet you," or are they like, "Hey, you're working on this, cast me?" Like, where are we going with aggression?
where we're going
Going
all the
all over.
all over the place. Um, and it's an art. I honestly, after being in this business for, people have been in this business longer than I have, but as long as I have, over a
Yeah.
decade at this point, there is a way to do things without doing it, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, Something that I was talking about with my therapist this morning was the fact that just because I do something for one person does not mean that I'm going to do it for you.
Ooh, boundaries. Ooh. Ooh,
And I
boundaries.
think that that's something that I think is getting a little muffled,
Mhm.
but you have to ask. You have to ask. But you
Yeah.
can't be mad when something doesn't happen because it happens to someone that you know.
Right.
Because you don't know that connection, you don't know that relationship, you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So shoot that shot, put your best foot forward, and always and personalize it. And I don't
Mhm.
just mean like, hey, I'm Erica. I mean, how would you want to be connected? How would you want to be talked to? And that's usually how you can start that answer of, I don't know how to contact someone, I don't know how to email something. If you were an actor and someone saw you on stage, or someone saw your web series and someone decided to contact you, how would you want them to contact you? And that should be the answer on how you should contact somebody.
I love that. I love that so much. It's not a one size fits all, and I feel like, yeah, just internalizing it a little bit and reversing the lens and being like, "Hey, where are we
Yeah.
at?" I think that's really.
Yeah. I think sometimes a lot of things that we think as like artists, it's just human decency, human interaction. But for some reason, we put this huge crown on it because it's like, well, it's entertainment, it's the industry, it's whatever. But we're human,
Yeah.
right? So regardless of what industry we're working on, it's a human connection, it's communication.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's just very important to lead with that foot and not lead with, okay, so I need this and I need that and I need that. It's like, okay, well then what happens if you don't get it?
Mhm.
you know
Yeah.
so it's a part of the game. You got to shoot your shot. It's all about relationships. It is all about who you know, and what they know and what you know about them.
Right.
But you got to do it in a way that's comfortable for you, but also not too pushy. I had
Yeah.
someone in my emails a couple of days ago, and emails, God bless, and she emailed me before and I didn't see it. And mind you, I don't know this person at all. And she emailed me back and she was like, hey, just following up on the email that I sent, would really love to connect with you. And I said, well, I'm so sorry, I'll get right back to you. And she was like, well, it's of the utmost urgency. And it was just a question. It wasn't urgent. And that just left a really bad taste in my mouth,
Mhm.
because it wasn't, it was just she needed some advice about headshots,
Right.
which I get, but just realize that I know that that's urgent, but there's stuff that we're all dealing with, and we just have to give some people some grace.
Correct. And also what's urgent for one is not necessarily urgent for someone else, because you might have something else that is urgent for you. And I think, again, remembering that the world is large, and besides just our own little bubbles, there's a lot going on a macro and a micro level. And it's just kind of helpful to zoom out a little bit sometimes for a little perspective, I would say.
Yes.
You kind of mentioned it just with sliding into DMs. I'm curious because, I mean, I follow you on social, and I feel like you're super real, and you share personal things about your life, and in a way that feels honest and authentic, and then also about your work in a way that feels proud and intentional. And I feel like you've created a beautiful balance of humanness that I know I respond very well to with you. So thank you, first and foremost, in that world.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. But with that, social media has become a vehicle for some people and in some people's minds, but also just this weird version of communication and connection that is now in some capacity for some a way to, like, quote unquote, move the needle forward for your career and who you are. I mean, this weird, convoluted, non-spoken thing.
Yeah.
How do you feel it has impacted the way in which you are, say, meeting new talent? Or how do you feel it's impacting the way in which people are showing up in the room with their social media following? Let's start there.
Ooh, I don't think I've gotten that first question. I've gotten the second question. I don't think I've gotten, which is a really interesting question. I think for me, I was talking to a group of friends of mine. I was talking to a friend and his husband this last weekend. We were talking about metaverses, which is something I hadn't heard of in the tech, and Instagram is a metaverse. It's a place where it is a thing where you communicate in that space only, and you see things in that space only. So it's its own verse, and in that verse is a lot of prose, and I think, like you said, I love to use it when I'm looking at actors, because a lot of my job is looking at personality, and so, like, sure, have the acting Instagram as well, and have your personal Instagram. Like you said, Jennifer, like, mine is both. You're gonna get both things. And I like to see you with your dog. I like to see you on a hike. I like to see you with your friends, because it shows me a little bit more of your personality and me getting to know you outside of now this audition room, right?
Right.
So I do think having something, it does, and you don't need to do it. It's your way, if you just want to post about your personal life, that's fine. If you just want to post about your acting life, that's fine. If you want a Twitter, if you want a Facebook, you want an Instagram, you want TikTok, whatever you want. Even if it's a website, I think that is important. But I think there has to be something somewhere that is something. And also, it's another way for me to contact you. And it's another way for you to contact me. I'm in my DMs all the time looking. And sometimes it comes to the advantage of, like, oh, this person, I'm scrolling and I'm like, oh, yes, them, totally forgot, putting them on a list. Like, if, like, someone DMs me and I'm like, they would be great, putting them on a list, so that's very helpful. But I think with anything, you just have to know how to use it, and you know how to use it to your advantage. But it's a social media. It's a way to be social. It's a way to connect with people. I would be lying to tell you that I have brought in people from their DMs. I have. That is something that I do often. They'll send their reels, I look at it, and if it's great and it's something that fits in what I'm working on, great. So that's another part of shooting your shot. As of the second question, I don't necessarily know if that is something that has been brought in the room.
Good.
If someone is like, well, I have 1 million followers, then it's sort of just like, all right, then go, be your influencer thing. There hasn't been in my casting profession at this moment, there's never been a time where it's like, this person has 1 million followers, this person has 1 follower, we're going with the one with the 1 million followers.
I was going to ask that.
That hasn't happened to me yet. I do know that there are some networks that are like, put it next to, like, they'll have a list and they'll put their Instagram or their social media followings right next to their name.
Right.
That hasn't happened to me yet. The only caveat to that is when I was an associate on the Bold Type and we were specifically looking for an influencer.
Mm-hmm.
But that was like as if I was looking for someone who was proficient in badminton. You know, like that's the same thing in my head.
Right.
But I have yet to experience a time where I am solely casting on somebody who has 1 million followers and we pick them only because of that.
That's really great to know.
You know, because at the end of the day, it's your acting ability.
Right.
You gotta be, you gotta have the ability. And if you have 1 million followers and you have the ability, great. But if you have 1 million followers and you don't have the ability, it gets a little tricky, you know? I think also in the indie space, it might be more popular too, because they're trying to get their stuff out there. They're trying to get people to see it. So, and look at marketing,
Oh, yeah.
Before they would do this huge marketing campaign worldwide, blah, 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 spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now they're splitting that hundreds of thousands of dollars into like 5 influencers that have millions of followers because they were like, well, if I give you 10,000, I give you 20,000, I give that, it will hit the world.
Correct.
Instead of spending all of this money on billboards and commercials and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
I guess going in a different direction for that, in a world where, I'd taken a class with a casting director the other week, and, he was just breaking down statistics of how many submissions he gets per role, even from a co-star to a guest star, yada, yada, yada. So let's just talk numbers for a second, and numbers are not my vibe because, here I sit as an actor. But just because we're here with that, he was talking about how for one co-star on this, it was a network show, and on this co-star they got a 5,000 submissions for 2 or 3 lines, which tracks because it's relatively generic, maybe like a barista or whatever it was. Anybody can do that. And then from there, they have to bring in maybe 80 of their top. So how do you go, I guess, if you don't mind sharing, what is your strategy for number overload in terms of, is it agencies and management? Is it who you know first? Is it producer recommendations? Is it, I already had this person who came in last week and I wanted to bring them, like, is it pre-assigned already before it even comes in? Like, I imagine it's different per project. But
it's different per project. It's different per anything. It's different per person. It's not even per project. Like, you could be working on a TV show and episode 1 is one way, episode 2 is another way, episode 3 is another way, producers' requests come in first. That's first stop, full stop. If a producer has a request, if a director has a request, they are getting in, that's they're the captains of the ships. So whoever they want to see, they gets to be seen.
Okay.
Whoever said the 5,000 submissions, totally right.
Yep.
I was working on a pilot for ABC last year, and it was orderly, like you said, barista, waiter, something like that, orderly, one line. I think the line was like, she's going to be okay, or something like that. I got 1,800 submissions, and our job is to go through all of those submissions. And so what I do, it's a kind of a mixture of what you were saying, because that's why, and we'll probably get to this in a minute, but the victories of it all, where you might say like, well, I didn't book it, but how many times have you been brought in? Right. And so that's kind of usually my first line of defense, are the people that didn't get it but got close.
Right. I say that all the time. You're not booking the job, you're booking the room.
You're booking the room, right?
Booking
so
the room.
It's like, oh yeah, they were in the top 3, or even hell, they were someone I sent. Right. They might not even be someone who producers selected or who got pinned, but they're someone who I think is great and could fit this. So that's usually my first line of defense. And then the second line of defense is just going through the submissions. And honestly, it happens in tandem. You'll be going through the submissions like, yes, just saw them, boom, in. So that's that. And then it's also people I don't know, because I need to know everybody, and so that's why this time of virtual auditioning is a beautiful time. And we'll probably get to that in a minute, but it is a beautiful time because I have time to see more people than I didn't get to before. Like you said, bringing in 80 people for a co-star would never happen ever in old times. Old times meaning before March of 2020. That would never happen. You'd bring in maybe 20, maybe 15, depending on the casting director. But 80, never. But now we can do that.
Mhm.
You know, now we can see, because time is a construct. And if and if I'm in a session from 10 to 6 and I'm seeing 10 people every hour, you know, what is that? 6 hours? Like, no, that's 8. That's 80 people, I guess. You know,
Numbers,
numbers.
numbers and
Right.
math. Yeah, that's
80,
it.
80 people. That's for the whole thing. If I only have one day and I can only see 5 roles and I can only see 80 people, 80 divided by 5, what is that? I can't think right now.
Girl, I don't.
You know, whatever the heck it is.
Now I'm
But
like doing math in my brain. I'm
yeah,
like, is
yeah.
this?
I don't know. But yeah, it's something where you got to think about that. And so now, when I'm at home and I can't sleep, or when I'm at home and I'm eating my lunch, I can look through self tapes. And honestly, on Michael Che's show, if anybody watched season 1, that's a huge cast. I'm casting about 30 people per episode. I don't know how I would have done it, honestly, in old times. I would have, obviously, but I don't know how I would have. And I'm so glad that I can do it this way, because I get to meet so many people and there's one roles that we're casting. We're casting 6 roles right now. Out of the 6, 5 of them has never been on TV.
Wow, I love this.
5 of them have never been on TV. 4 of them are musical theater women.
Yes.
And I'm giving them the first TV credit, you know? And so that's awesome.
Yeah.
And
do you feel like it's going to stay? I mean, obviously the goal is for us to continue being, but this method of really vetting for co-stars, especially, type of thing, obviously maybe even get into guest stars.
Oh, but you mean
like virtual land of like, we don't even go to
100%. 100%. Okay. If anything, I think best case scenario will be it's a hybrid, or whatever I don't even know if that's best case scenario or best case for whomever.
Right.
But I think first round co-stars, probably, especially. Yeah, I think so. And I think we'll be back in person for the callbacks and the tests. And this is just me. Somebody who's watching this could be like, no, I'm back. Theater's different. I think people are like, well, theater is back. I'm like, yeah, well, that's a medium where we got to look at you live. You know, like when we did Passover and Chicken and Biscuits, we were the first ones up. You know, so like going into a room, I literally texted one of my friends in casting and said, okay, so I printed out the sides. I have the sign-in sheet. I have my camera. Do I need to? Because I hadn't done it. I hadn't done it in over a year.
Yeah.
Like I did it in like 18 months. And so like that muscle was completely out of whack. And so it was awesome to see people come in and like get that muscle back and being like, well, room, people, table, you know? And it's still, but I think the day-to-day, you know, you have your appointment at 3:15 to go down to Bonnie Finnegan's office for Blacklist for, you know, a co-star or a guest star. I don't necessarily know if that's going to happen unless it's a producer session or a test or, you know, something of that matter.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about self-tapes for a hot sec, because it's the hot topic. I guess I want to hear your thoughts as to the quote of, but because they have so many submissions and because they can watch as many as they want, they can always turn me off within 3 seconds, and they don't actually watch me. They don't watch me, and it goes into the ether and no one sees it. What is that for you?
If I didn't watch your self-tape, I would have more sleep than I do now. Honestly, like, no, I mean, if you know me, you know I'm up at 3 and 4 in the morning.
Correct. I know that, but yes.
You know, like, and
I know.
I'm not saying that I'm not saying that people don't do that. Yeah. Of course they do. You know, I think that is, everything has a pro and con. And I think that is a con of it. And meetings, you know, like you're on Zoom meetings and you're like, I don't want to hear this right now. I'm just going to let down, you know, I'm listening, but you don't need to see me, what I'm doing. You lose that connection. Right. But my job is my job. My job is to watch your self-tape. However, on that note of the 3-second rule, you gotta catch us though in that first 15 seconds. You do. Now more than ever. In person, we could see the moment at the end because we have to. But there's some casting directors that give you 10 seconds and then they hit next. And honestly, before this time, I think people are thinking about the audition when we came in and you saw me or you saw another casting director. But the truth of the matter is, you weren't auditioning in person for the producers or for the directors. We were sending your tapes off anyway.
Right.
right? So that part is still the same. And the 10-second rule was then there. It's now just, now I have the 10-second rule and other casting directors have 10-second rules, because now, like you said, some casting directors hit next. But for the producers and the showrunners and the directors, they could hit next.
Yeah.
And they're the ones making the decisions. So you have to captivate them in the first 10 seconds. It's not that because they don't want to watch your tape. They do want to watch your tape. But guess what? That showrunner, that producer, they also have a locations meeting that they have to go to. They have to look through background extras, headshots, to get those approved. They have to go to down the halls of costumes to see what costumes that this day player that shoots tomorrow is going to wear. They have so much to do that I give them, 20 tapes. They might have 2 minutes to watch those. So if you don't catch them in the first 10 seconds, it's not that they want to hit next, they have to hit next.
I guess my other question then with self-tapes would be, do you have, for you, obviously it's all a preference, do you have a particular aesthetic? Like, do you like a blue backdrop? Do you care at all? Is it more, do you like a natural, you just want to be able to see and hear a person?
I need to see and hear you.
Right.
I think things are things, sure. Like, but it still leans into that. I need to see you and I need to hear you. So if you're standing in front of a window with the window's light right behind you, I'm not going to see you. You're going to be silhouetted. Right. So that goes against the I need to see you, I need to hear you rule. If you're standing in front of a very busy backdrop, like if you're standing in front of a bookcase, or you're standing in front of, I don't know, your puzzle collection, your shoe collection, it pulls focus from you, right? So a clean blank background, that's why people use the blue, that's why people use the green, that's why people use the gray, because it's just clean and clear. Lighting wise, I just need to see you, like I said. You don't have to buy a ring light, you don't have to buy 3-point lighting. I was talking to an actor recently and he was saying that people were going in on it at Reddit about 3-point lighting versus ring light versus 3-point lighting. Doesn't matter. I think ring lights are easier because it's just put it down and it lights your face. 3-point lighting, you can mess up. You can mess up a 3-point lighting setup. So you have room to be in error for 3-point lighting. But it doesn't matter. As long as I can see you and I can hear you, that's all that's important. Of course, don't do something like that and then don't do something like this. I think, that doesn't do you a disservice.
Y'all, for anybody listening, Erica just flipped her camera up, so you just saw the bottom of her nose and then her toes. So just so you have an idea.
I don't think that's gonna be helpful for you and your self-tape moment. But it's not rocket science. And there's so much grace given. I try to give grace. Like I literally just did a self-tape. My boyfriend's an actor. I did a self-tape with him this morning. And he found out that his frame wasn't as best as it could be. Like, it was a little bit more than cut off than what usually should. But I was like, this is fine. Like it's not, I've gotten self-tapes that have looked like this.
Unreal.
It's just my nose. So I'm just like, your eyes, like I can see your eyebrows, like it's not cut off.
Yeah.
So he was freaking out about it. But again, just put your best foot forward. Do the best you can. The thing I've been hearing is like, oh, if you get it before the deadline, you're going to get booked. That is not true. It just means that you got it in before the deadline. The only pro of that is that when I do watch your self-tape, because yes, we are watching them on a rolling basis, but I'm sending the link when I send the link, So we're watching them on a rolling basis. The only pro about getting it in before the deadline is if I watch your tape and I see that something is A, maybe wrong, maybe it's not synced enough, or B, maybe you didn't hit the mark on what the director has in their vision, I can then tell you to retape. Whereas
do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Have you done that? Yeah.
Yeah, all the time. Whereas if you give it to me by the deadline, I might not have time to do that. Another thing about deadlines are there for a reason, but that does not necessarily mean that it's the deadline. If you can't get it in because of life or you have so much going on, just ask if there's an extension. Don't feel like you have to get it in. Ask for an extension. If we have to get it, I will let you know. Actually, I know I sent this to you yesterday at 6 p.m. and I'm asking it for you at 11 a.m. I am so sorry. Unfortunately, that's what it is.
Right.
Or if it's not, then I'll let you know. Oh, no. You got, even if it's another hour that you need, if it's like, hey, I know this is at 11, can I please submit it at noon? Again, sometimes actually I need it at 11 because this role needs to show up tomorrow at 8 a.m. Right? And they need to get tested and blah, 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 blah. But sometimes there is an extra hour. Sometimes there's an extra day even. So you always have to ask. And if you're not going to make the deadline, you have to let me know. Cool. Please. Because you never know what it is. You could have been requested by the producers and the director, you know, and you're the front runner. And then for some reason, I tell you to submit the tape by 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, and it's 3 p.m. on a Tuesday and I haven't gotten your tape yet. And then I'm reaching out to you, or I'm reaching out to your reps, and then they have to reach out to you. And it's like, oh yeah, sorry, can I get an extension? And it's just sort of just like, I would have loved to have this conversation before. Yeah.
Yeah. What about your thoughts on props?
I love a good prop. Just don't make the scene about the prop. So if at the top of the scene you're at a bar and you know we're talking and great, that's great. If you're on the phone, use your phone. Hello, blah 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 blah. I don't like this. This doesn't make sense to me.
The hand up to the head thing, right?
And the only thing I would say is don't mime the drive.
Okay.
That's my thing. But also this whole business is so subjective. There are casting directors who are like, no props.
Oh yeah,
no props. But I think if there's a scene and it's about the bagel, we need to see the bagel, you know? Okay. But don't make it all like a food, two little chews at the top, we're done. I don't want to see you eating the whole time. Unless that is the scene, right?
Yeah.
If that's the scene. But, you know, I'm just going to be being like, oh, wow, you chew like that.
And that's either a terrible thing. I'd have been like, and 3-second rule, we're out. No, thank you, chewing. We are done here. What about improv? What's your thoughts on improv? Because I know obviously that depends on genre. That depends on, you have to know like the writers and you have to know usually the energy in the room around it. But for you specifically, I guess improv and also punctuation just generally, or what's actually written on the text. Like if I say talk instead of speak, or you know what I mean? Like that type of thing.
Yeah, I think, again, I was working with my boyfriend with something this morning. And since it was theater, I was very meticulous on like punctuation. His first line was a period. And on one take, he made it a question. I was like, ooh, no, let's go back. That's a period. So I think something like that, you know, since it is so important to the text, and I'm not saying like film and TV are not important to the text. It's the text, it's their babies. But I think for me, improv especially, comedy, of course, is a little loosey-goosey. You know, it's more loosey-goosey. I shouldn't say it is loosey-goosey. But I think ask. I think if you have any types of questions, you should ask. I think rule of thumb could be if you don't have the button or the last line of the scene, you can give a little something, something there, just a little bit. They don't need you to rewrite the scene. They wrote the scene. They don't need you to rewrite it. Or if you want to give a little bit of, like if you're, you know, at the bus stop and you're waiting for somebody and it's like they're talking to a friend, a little bit of that whatever that conversation is, that can be that. When you're talking about switching words, I'm not necessarily mad at it. I think, though, that word still needs to cut how that word does, right? So if it's a curse word, if it's the F word and you say freak or frick, though that's not the same hit, right? And if you don't curse, then maybe that project's not for you. But if it's like, you know, speak instead of talk, or, you know, dude instead of bro, or whatever it is, I think that's okay, as, you know, if that's in your voice. I had an actress came in, you know, back in the day, and it was like she was talking to her dad, and it was a very emotional scene. And like he was like on a ventilator and things like that. And she said she did the scene and she was like, can I call him daddy? I call my dad daddy. Can I call him daddy? And I was like, if that's what makes it better for you. And it did. It was personal, you know? So I think things like that are okay.
Okay. What are your thoughts on submitting, if it's a short scene, submitting 2 takes, even if they didn't request it, or just 2 takes generally that are obviously different for whatever reasons, and not just
as long as they're different. I think 2 takes are fine for shorter scenes. For one-liners, you can maybe even do 3. But I think if it's like a series regular audition, I would say only do 1.
Okay.
you know, but they have to be different. I think that's the thing. If
What
you're
do you,
like,
what constitutes different for you?
yes, different is tone, relationship, and yeah, those are the first two that come to mind, right? So if you're talking to a teacher versus your mom, those are going to be two different takes.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking to your sister versus your girlfriend, those are two different takes,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're mad at someone versus being happy with someone, those are two different takes. If you're saying, well, I said hi that way in one take and I said hi that way in another take, it don't matter. You said hi. It doesn't matter. Oh, well, I paused for 2 seconds there and I paused for 3 seconds there. So that's different. No, it's not. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Another thing is, you know, if you have an accent that's not naturally American, whatever the heck that means, if you are from London, if you are from Mozambique, if you are from New Zealand, and you're going to do one in an American accent, again, whatever that means, and you're going to do one in your natural accent, those are totally different takes, you know? And I try to encourage people to do that because it's all about uniqueness. It's all about the unique. And what show or what movie do we watch that someone does not have another accent?
Right.
That happens all the time. Why can't the doctor be from Mozambique? Why can't the, stylist be from Paris? You know, they probably are.
Yeah.
So if that is something that makes you you, and it's not about someone growing up in Texas or Chicago, and it's just something that happened somewhere, then you can use your accent.
I love that. I guess another question, and we're still here, and then I'm going to get us out of this little hole, is for people who don't have reps or people who are unrepresented and they are venturing more into TV and film land. What would you say would be some of the most helpful beginning advice of like getting your foot in the door? Is it taking workshops with casting directors? Is it getting your reel together? I'm obviously all the above, but like, is it what priority wise would you recommend to be the first thing?
Does this person have any, like, is this person like a theater person who's trying to get into film and TV?
Let's say
or is
that.
this person? Yeah. I think the first thing is just a piece of advice. And I think when we come from theater, especially musical theater, I think the thought process is I'm too big. Like, I am too big for this medium. What big means, when someone tells you you're being too big, they're using that term wrong, in a wrong way. When I say you're being too big, which I will never say, well, I can't say never, I don't know what I'm going to say, but if I ever use that term, what I mean is that I can see an actor. And I don't want to see an actor. I want to see a person that just happens to have these words in front of them and knows them and is just doing them, right? 9, I would say 7.5 out of 10, it has to do with your volume. Because you're on stage 8 times a week and you're projecting for Rosie Z, and the hello that will be usually in a coffee shop, you have to project because you have to hit it up there.
Right.
You're not going to say that in a coffee shop. You're just going to say, hey, you know, there's an intimacy. And I don't mean sexual. I mean closeness when I say intimacy. So there is an intimacy with this box that we look at, be it on our phone or our computer or our TV. There's a closeness to that. And so most of the time when you're being too big, it has everything to do with your volume. And all you got to do is dial it down. And that energy that you're putting into your volume will go into somewhere else. It'll go into your body. It'll go into your choices. It'll go somewhere else. So that's number one, right? Is don't worry about being too big. Don't worry about anything, really, honestly. Just like worry about just like showing up and doing the thing. But I think that's number one, because I think that's the thought, especially musical theater, people who are in musical theater. It's like, oh, I'm too much. It's like, we love that you're too much. Like, that's what makes you, you know? It's just, how do we use that too much and just put it in this box, right? If the scene is crazy, if there's a fire in the scene and you go off and you go crazy, you're not going to whisper, fire, there's a fire. You're going to go insane, right?
I would hope so. There's a fire. I would hope.
You would go insane in that scene. So that's fine. Back to the technicality and all that stuff. I think getting in a great class is great. Do your research. Everything I'm going to say is going to have the caveat of do your research. Getting into a class. However, classes, everything costs money, right? And if you were going to buy a new computer, you would research it at least for 5 seconds to see if that computer's for you. If you're going to go on a diet, you were going to research it to see if that's good for you. Same thing goes for here. We all have friends that are in the same profession that we are in. Ask them what classes they take and if they got something out of it. Same thing goes for casting director workshops. There are a lot of people who are great at them, and there are a lot of people who are misusing the system. Okay. So talk to people. That's a good time to talk to people and see, like, hey, I saw you talk, you know, I heard you took so-and-so's class. Did you get anything out of it, or was it just a thing? Mm-hmm. I think before that, regardless of if you're going to talk to a friend or not, figure out the shows that you want to be in, or even not even the shows that you want to be in. What are the shows that shoot in wherever you are, be it in New York, LA, Atlanta, New Orleans, Chicago, whatever it is. Figure out who those casting directors are. Not only the casting directors, but the casting associates. Not only the casting associates, the casting directors, right? The casting assistants, excuse me. Figure out who those people are and see if they're doing anything for free. And I don't just mean like workshops, I mean panels. Mm-hmm. There's so many people that I have brought in who have just been in my panels, like just been audience members in my panels, that then follow up and say, hey, I saw your panel, or hey, I saw your video on Backstage, or hey, whatever, here are my stuff. And there's that connection, right? It's not just, and I'm not knocking anyone who doesn't. I do bring in people who just email me or DM me and say, hey, I saw that you're casting this, blah, blah, blah. I bring them in all the time, but at least there's some point of connection. There's some point of reference. So do your research, get into class, watch as much as you can. That's for free. You can do that for free. Watch as much as you can to see what people are doing and their technique. Yeah. Listening is important, I think, also, is very important. To me, listening is about 51% of the job, is how you listen and you take it in, and then
I'd say more. I don't know. I'd gauge more. I don't know. Maybe it's because of the age that we're living in. I'm just like, no, hello.
No one listens. No one's listening. Yeah. No one's listening. And that's usually a lot of my first adjustments is to, and it's hard, right? That's the craft, because you as a actor have to know what other people's lines are so that you know when to come in. That is your cue. So you have to know the whole script, but you still have to react as if you didn't know that whole script, and you still have to listen and take that in so that you can react in that function. But there's so many people that are not listening, and I can see that. And so one of my first adjustments is let it hit you, regardless of what it is. Sit with it, let it hit you. I know it's TV and there is some pace to it, but don't mind taking a half of a beat to let it hit, especially when the scene is emotional, especially when we're talking about like relationships or family dynamics or whatever. Like you gotta take that time to do that work. And watching others do that are great in their craft on TV and even in theater or in films, I think is a masterclass in and of itself.
Yeah. I want to know more about you right now. What are you but just more in terms of like, what are you working on right now that's just speaking to your heart? Like, what is filling you up with joy at the moment? And frankly, this doesn't, you know what? Let's remove that work. What right now, just generally, because forget the work can be all consuming. Like, what right now is filling you and your heart with some joy and giving you life and purpose and groundedness, because we could use that too.
We could use a good groundedness. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard right now. It's very hard right now. Every morning I wake up and I am like, both feet are on the ground.
Yeah,
both feet are on the ground. Both both pinky toes, both big toes are on the ground. We are grounded right now in this moment. Things that are bringing me joy are the things that always brought me joy right now. Friends, family, boyfriend, seeing shows. I think that is something that I took very much advantage of back in the day. Whatever. Now I'm seeing everything. I was at a show last night. I'm at a show tomorrow. You know, after things opened up, I'm like, I'm gonna go. I'm wearing 2 masks. Everybody mask the hell up, and we're gonna go. And we're gonna sit. And we're gonna see theater. You know, so I've re-fallen in love with theater, and because that was taken away from us. The thing that makes New York so special and different, in my opinion, is the fact that at any time and any day, you could walk on from 42nd Street to 52nd Street and get a ticket and go see something for the first time, you know?
Yeah.
So that was taken away from us. So now we can. So I encourage anybody who's listening, anybody who's watching, to just go see something. It could be Broadway. It could be off Broadway. It could be hell, Showtime, like on the street. Like, go see something, because that was taken, like walking in Times Square. We don't even have to talk about it during 2020, but just seeing that, seeing art, seeing theater, seeing dance, seeing music, seeing everything. It's just, I think that is something that's bringing me joy.
Yes. Are you, with your multi-hatted self, is there a particular project that you want to, like, obviously you plug the one that's popping off, but like one that's coming down the pipeline that you're like, you can teaser us about, or that you want to brag a little bit about? Like, this is, I'm giving you the torch to fully brag at the moment.
I don't know. I mean, check out Bust Down, March 10th, Peacock. That was just a joy to work on. It's Chris Redd, Sam J, Langston Kerman, and Jack Knight. And they were kicking around this project for the past 5 years, and Peacock gave them the platform, and I was just honored to be a part of their team, and it was just a joy to work on. It was one of the most collaborative projects I've worked on in a very long time, where, you know, you had the meeting, everybody was on the same page, you sent selects, they got back to you, you know, and so I really enjoyed working with that team. It's something that I will treasure for probably the rest of my life, definitely for a long time. So yeah, you know, all Black people, you know, that's really rare. So it's a funny one. That's rare too. So yeah, I would say support them. March 10th, Peacock. If you have Peacock, I think check out the Bust Down.
Yes, beautiful. And for all of our listeners, what is the best way for them to respectfully communicate with you if they so desire, within your boundaries, and the way in which you most like to be communicated to, by date, time? Like, what is your like ideal vision of communication?
Yeah, hit me up on Instagram at elove67. At elove67. That's where it's at. I'm there more times than I probably should, to be quite honest. I should do a break. When people are like, I'm breaking for the month, I'm like, wow, what is that?
I know.
I'm like, good for you. So I'm there morning, noon, night, and morning again. So elove67, drop me a DM. I'm always in the DMs. I might not get back to you ASAP. I might not get back to you at all. I try to. I really do try to. I try to respond to every single email that comes my way. It might be weeks or months later, but I try to respond to you. I try to respond to the DMs if they are appropriate and respectful. Because no respect does not get any respect from me. So yeah, at elove67.
Everyone, y'all understand why I brought in Erica. Just like, your heart is so open, and you're real, and you're compassionate, yet like, you know exactly how you do your job well. And it's just such a wonderful marriage. And I'm so grateful that you've given your time to this, to Empowered Artist Collective, prior to this as a trailblazer. And I'm so grateful that you're in our community here and doing the work that you're doing. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm so excited to continue supporting you however I best can, and EAC however we best can. And I'm sure this is only the beginning.
Only the beginning. The road goes both ways. So I'm excited to keep collaborating with you all, and getting to know more of you, and just to rock it out and boogie on down.
Yes. Amazing. Thank you, my dear.
Thank you.